Jesse, very good to have you on here. Just jumping right into it with you here. Do you recall the first spark of interest within music? Are you able to pinpoint that in your life?
Oh man, that's
I
real
I
challenging.
we're coming out strong.
I like digging back into the ether for that though, but I feel like I'm fortunate in that it was a prominent thing in my house. Um and I had a lot of just peripheral music experiences of honestly, I remember having a lot of powerful musical experiences in like temple uh as a very young person and just like something about the way like a single voice in that space hit. I was also fortunate there were kind of like uh fun loving like acoustic guitar people who would like do kids groups in my town. One was called like Musical Munchkins.
It's a good name, strong
So
name.
yeah, strong alliteration. And it just created like a pretty, unintimidating, joyous atmosphere around music. And my uncle is a drummer, and my dad uh is a therapist who was making really incredible uh home recordings of music inspired by the trials and tribulations of his patients. It's through an interesting singer-songwriter from Pennsylvania lens. Um, and yeah, I think I don't know. I just remember it kind of always being there. So
Yeah. Did, did you listen to those recordings?
yeah, of my dad's.
Yeah.
Yeah, heavily. I mean my brothers know all of the words. And we actually later had a really a fat garage band project going of layering our own performances on top of one of our favorite tracks of his. So that collaboration through across time and space kind of thing, and it was yeah, I think that was inspiring. It's so cool. They were really funny, but really just like yeah, heart-wrenching ballads. And I do remember like he would like play it for us like on his little like cassette in the car, um while he would like run errands or we were doing things together. And I remember like I have a distinct memory of being horrified that he was like trapped in the dashboard of the car, um like singing and playing to me when he wasn't physically present, but he was coming through the car.
Valid response.
Yeah, so I think before I could understand something about occupying space and the permanence, impermanence of someone leaving and going, but powerful music experiences all around. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your father's reaction to you and your siblings' rendition of his song?
Oh, he was very moved. Yeah, yeah, it was like at a tough moment, and we delivered it to him as a little gift. So it was a nice thing, and I think that's like a bit of a through line of music for me is like uh it's obviously the heart of and like center of my life in a like on paper career kind of way, but I really need to like keep that fire kind of lit in my personal life of like it's something that I communicate like with and to my like family members through, um as corny as that sounds, but like I really like I've been in like musical projects with like my big brother who like taught me how to play bass in the first place, and my uncle, and um now with like my niece and nephew. I've always wanted to be Uncle Jesse, playing music, a la Full House. It's long been my dream, without any of the stamos, but it's really
Right.
nice.
in a little bit of Coulier or not so much?
I hope so. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I've always felt a little more simpatico with Joey, but I think I think yeah, just it like it's really important to remember that it's like music exists on that plane as well, where it's just like playing to know a like particular outcome, but just like for the sake of playing in a non-pressured way with like babies or surrounded by animals or like that kind of thing. It's a real nice antidote to like being caught up in like the heaviness of making music and having it go out in the world and be worried about like how that's received
Hmm.
and performing it in like a predictable way and stuff. So
So you are keeping that flame fed through working on music, even outside of that capacity in a more professional sense.
yeah, I think there's like bunch of flame like little proverbial stove tops to keep lit for me, and I feel a little empty without hitting all of them. So I yeah, whether it's like bass is like my primary instrument and that's what I do in Crumb, but like I get a lot of joy out of like playing my electronic drum kit to like stupid drumming playlists. But it's just like it's not because I'm preparing for some project or recording or something. It's just like a really pleasant like kind of mind state to be in. So
Right. Is it easy to detach from what you do as a profession with music and just the love of it outside of that? Is that an easy, there's a fork in the road and one goes this way, one goes that way?
ooh, I think they kind of run in tandem, but it is a funny thing with like we kind of do things in like seasons, it feels like, where it's like, you know, a sort of on or off season of like touring mixed with like recording or other more home based um kind of like band projects. And so it feels like very like on off and easy to be like really missing shows for like the months when they're not happening. And the inverse, of course, you could be really missing home and be on tour for a very long time. But I think just yeah, keeping like music in my daily life through that, whether it's just like uh yeah, like hitting that instrument that isn't my primary instrument or playing like a stupid Amazon mini bass or something. Like it's just something that's like clearly filling out the other side. But then of course performing live and doing the like Crumb thing is like the most rewarding part of my life. So
So music would still be at the forefront of your life. Do you think if you weren't in Crumb?
yeah, all the way. But it's really nice to have such a clear way of like reeling in something as abstract as music and like experiencing just like a huge kind of like musical journey with Crumb. Because I think that's always what I wanted to do is like be a part of a project that resonates with people more than like the hired gun thing. And so I really yeah, I really don't take that for granted. It's like it's really special.
Right. Uh, when you first entered into kind of playing music yourself, were you attracted to the bass immediately? Was that something that you were like, yeah, that's my instrument?
Ooh, I feel like I really like I had those first experiences of like pick an instrument in public school of like what's going to be your band or orchestra. Like you have to kind of make that decision and it puts you
Right.
down a track.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, I definitely I like had some early piano experiences and kind of felt like this is really exciting but probably not my instrument. And I played trumpet and really connected with that. And I feel like there's some weird similarities between trumpet and bass that like might have connected for me, but like I think yeah, I just I played that in like my school like band, and then like there was literally just like an intro like bluesy elementary school like song and band that had a bass part, and I like transitioned in that moment. But that also aligned with my brother, who I shared a wall with, just being an absolute like just really the early 2000s just like brother rock genre. And so these things combined, it was as simple as just like my family like went out one day, and my oldest brother, who's 7 years older than me, was left to um babysit basically, and he just like taught me some Sublime on bass. Yeah, but there's definitely, I have like a certain sentimental view of that like era of like being inspired by like my older brother's musical taste, combined with the opportunity to just like hang out with him and play. It was like, yeah, it was a
And
feeling.
you said a 7 year difference of age gap between you two.
Yeah, I'm one of three brothers, and we're a little spread, but
Are you middle or youngest?
I'm youngest of three. I think there's some crucial period where like there's like all music hits you so hard and is so comforting and kind of like such a powerful memory of experiencing it for the first time, that there's something like jaded that happens after like a certain age where it like all has less kind of like currency. Like it's a really pessimistic way of looking at it, but I don't like, obviously music is my life, and I like it fills me up with so many positive emotions all the time, and I'm constantly in awe of it, but I'm also kind of fixated on like, yeah, what would happen to my like child mind when I encountered things like that for the first time. And I remember like that when like the Beatles one like anthology thing was happening. It was just some like yeah, it was some like compilation that was being marketed at the time, some Beatles anniversary, and I just like caught, I remember on TV like an ad for it that was showing you the entire kind of collapsed timeline of the Beatles in just like that infomercially way. But I found out like I heard the Beatles for the first time, and like saw clips of like Shea Stadium performance, and also like John Lennon's bloody glasses, and knowing that he died like all in one kind of like 30-second like infomercial. And I remember that was a real like brain blast moment when I was like really like just set off by like, wow, this is a really clearly a really important like human event. Like, what is this?
There's a lot of
And
information to take in from 30 seconds there. The whole
yeah,
timeline of arguably the most popular band that will ever exist ever.
yeah, it was really strange for my young mind.
When you started to find these different bands when you were being exposed to these different sounds, was there a certain like certain bands that really stuck out to you from that period?
I mean, yes, but I think it was like it's some combination of going through like phases of being really devoted or stuck on certain albums or bands, and some of them you kind of like stack as you go and they stay, and you like revisit them, and some kind of like fall to the wayside. But um coming out of that period, like I just kind of, I feel like I was getting a certain stream of kind of like Simon and Garfunkel leaning like 60s, 70s, like folk and blues stuff from like my mom, and my dad was showing me things that were more in the like hard rock and like funk world.
In Therapist
Um
World,
exactly. No, my yeah, but I think it's like in terms of the music that was going on in like my home, that was kind of one thing. But then I don't, once I got into like middle and high school, it was all about like, yeah, like Elliott Smith and like things that were more in like the that kind of songwriter tradition, but then also really always been super glued to like soul and funk music as a way of like learning bass, which I think is an interesting thing that happens with bass.
Right.
Um, but those are just like, yeah, just I don't know. I kind of had like just very different dense phases of being playing in different musical settings of like this kind of music is how I'm experiencing my instrument. And then at the same time it's like we're that like LimeWire generation where everything is just like a really messy playlist and that becomes your musical identity is very eclectic and you don't have to be one thing. So
Right. Just yeah, I mean, do you think it's one file and then it's another?
that is a whole nother issue. I really fully misunderstood, as many did, like
Yeah.
entire catalogs of artists. Just like really confused about something. And then there were other bit times that I thought that like I remember hearing a weird song by the band and being like, this definitely is labeled wrong after I illegally downloaded it. And it totally was the band, actually.
Oh
So
wow. Oh, so you kind of had that. That's an odd experience there.
yeah, it was flipped.
That's I think that's more as a more of a rare moment to have during that time frame of music.
Yeah.
Was it around this middle school, high school time that you are starting to make music on your own or wanting to at least?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember really funny garage band experiments with like hitting drumsticks on objects and playing my dad's like beater acoustic and um yeah, just like really it was literally that and then like fully wonkily but self-produced Elliott Smith covers when I was like 12 and just getting working out like kinks of just initial stages of like recording myself and understanding how to do that and the difference between like performing live and performing for a recording. Yeah, I think it was like all just happening simultaneously in terms of like playing in the capacity of like in my home with friends. That was like something that I really value too. It was like a way of just like hanging out with my friends, and I'm fortunate that like a lot of them were very musically inclined. Um, and just playing it in some ensemble capacity. Like I really a lot of me like I really miss playing like in like a big band setting. Or just playing in like a big jazz band. That's there's something really like it's really not ego driven and that you're like a small part of a big thing and you're really like it just feels uh like a very different approach to music that I kind of like left behind and do miss. And obviously I could join some sort of low key local big band ensemble thing, but something about like having pivotal music experiences through that I think was really like helpful.
That was also a staple within this journey through music.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I had really awesome like mentors and stuff leading those things in my life. And so it made it like a really huge part of my life. And then I think that translated to like in the next phase of my life playing a lot of music that I had kind of gotten into in that era in just like the um world of like soul music and Motown and like the way that like bass kind of like lends itself to analyzing like James Jamerson parts and like and that whole era of like pivotal 60s soul music. Um it like then I was in like a soul band when I was living in Boston that would play like very athletic kind of like 2 3 hour sets and do residencies and stuff, playing like that whole catalog of music and original music that was like existed in that world kind of. And that was where I got a lot of my comfortability with live performance from.
Oh,
So
it wasn't in the garage.
no, like it also kind of was, or in my like definitely had the era of just like every day after school playing through like a horrifying multi-effects pedal along to just like learning like Pink Floyd solos and pretending that I'm like um in live at Pompeii or something.
As you
Um
do. Yeah.
as one does, as is
Right.
customary. Um but then but then later like yeah, kind of took different forms, like definitely the garage thing or like anyone's basement with a drum kit, like with friends and such. Um, but for me, a really big part of my yeah musical experience was the consistency of like playing with this soul band at like the Middle East Corner in particular in Cambridge. And just dealing with like a lot of like unexpected variables of like the fights that would break out and people like throwing drinks. And I got like someone like rubbed like essential oils on my face while I was playing, as someone threw a beer inside of my bass because it has a hole. um and we performed on like it was like a 10-piece band behind a door that would open when everybody would enter in this like very populated street corner. And um people would just like rip my amp out. It was like it just kind of the most chaotic like musical experiences you could have, and I think it was like really healthy to like everything since then has paled in comparison. So it's just like it was like warming up with a bunch of bats or something.
Right. Right. You got the hard part out of the way early.
There are plenty of more live performance challenges to come, but that was like really formative for having things go sideways and trying to like recapture a room's attention or energy or be like we got you and just make people feel good with my bass play, like just the confidence of like I know I can make this room feel good with the way I play bass, as weird as that sounds. It's just
No,
like
yeah, I understand what you're saying. You got to be able to manage the energy.
it's a lot of energy management. It's an interesting tenuous thing, yeah, especially in that setting is like a small space that was just like a bar but packed with a lot of bodies. And whether it's that or like a basement show, like they can feel very volatile. And like yeah, like you're just you are having that very close feedback loop of energy obviously with an audience and stuff. And like I've had a lot of I had a lot of challenges in my like personal life at that time, and as everyone does through like these years of performing, a lot of like difficult uh life events. And I've always found that like the music thing is always where I feel like is centered, and like this is the thing that I can uh do in spite of my chaotic external circumstances. And I think like in those years I kind of developed that relationship with it where it's like this is the thing that's gonna it seems like a challenge for me to rise up to do this like 3 hour set at the end of like a tough week when my head is in like 1,000 places. But I'm gonna have this like almost religious experience where I've like sweated everything out and I've like given and gotten a lot of energy. And like it made music and performance a very like safe, fulfilling kind of place. Like I've always used it like that, I think.
And is that still the case now?
100%. Like I know that I'm gonna be good when I'm playing, and the rest of my life feels really challenging. Yeah.
I mean, at least one part is like cleaned out. You're like, this is fine. Now on to the rest.
Yeah.
You got
It's
to start somewhere.
Yeah, clean up your little corner, you know?
Right. Is this when you did you go to I read that you went to Tufts. Is that in Boston or in Massachusetts?
Yeah, it's in the Boston area. I mean, it wasn't a music school. It's where like the four of us happened to meet through playing experiences and stuff. But then we were split up between. I'm from a small town in New York, like the suburbs north of New York City. And then we met in Boston where I went to school, and we kind of like lingered and then split. The band was like partially living in the Boston area, partially in New York,
Mhm.
um, in like the first place. But then fully have since kind of been firmly based in New York. And but yeah, all those experiences we've been talking about had the converging thing of like meeting the members of Crumb and coming to New York and doing our thing over these past like 8 years.
Okay. What did you initially go to college to study? What was your major?
I did study music there. I think that I came at like I still really come at music from a non theoretical place, and a lot of like learning music theory and studying jazz was like a reverse engineering experience. It's still not something I feel confident in or like was a basis of my musical education. But I think it gave me a lot of time and kind of mentorship of just like playing and just like uh, having those musical relationships with people that would be so important. Um, so yeah, I studied music. I've always had an interest in um, visual art, which I was doing heavily as well, and lots of other things that I was pursuing simultaneously. But always knowing that like whatever happens, quote, career wise, like I'm gonna put music at the center of my life.
What was your father's reaction when you're like, "Yeah, I want to go to school for music"? Was he on board with it? Were your folks on board with it?
Yeah, I'm super fortunate. My family was really supportive about like um, my creative endeavors and always really fostered that stuff in the first place. And I don't undervalue that at all. I think having like an uncle who was a working musician and having a precedent for like how that could look um, and seeing how me or my siblings were um applying ourselves to like creative endeavors. Like I'm lucky that I had two older siblings to buffer some of that stuff.
Right, right.
I definitely had the support from my folks, and that definitely goes a long way.
Mhm.
It's not that there's not a lot of explaining to do in the family or that people don't worry, but um
It's less of a hurdle to go over.
yeah, definitely. I wasn't jumping through hurdles to get to music like that. So I super appreciate it. Yeah.
Real quick, your uncle who also plays music, was that your father's brother?
It was. Yeah.
Okay, so that there was also like a musical brotherhood within the prior generation.
Yeah, big time. My dad was in a high school band that played all of the what was then pop music of the day. Just like shredding guitar and singing his little heart out for these covers in Scranton, Pennsylvania. They're called the Vacant Lot.
Ooh,
Which
that's
I
not a
love.
bad name.
It's really not bad.
Yeah.
And then my uncles, who I love very much, they actually both of his siblings were and are amazing drummers, and they they had a musical act together called Skin Slappers,
Ooh,
um,
yeah.
percussion based brotherhood. Really incredible stuff.
So your father was the odd man out on that. It's like,
You
"Yeah,
know
you
what?
go ahead and go
Yeah,
play guitar. We're drummers."
Yeah, exactly. They definitely had some playing experiences together. But yeah, now one uncle is in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and that area's premier AC/DC cover band. And the other, the one who I first spoke about, I see him play music very frequently in the New York area. It's amazing. And yeah,
They
I
so
really,
they spread out to conquer.
exactly. They found their little musical spots, and so yeah, there was no shock to my family of like pursuing music in that way. Um I have such, yeah, I really fantasize about just like the the very cheesy but basic idea I was talking about earlier, just like playing music with my niece and nephew, or with like my brother, or like how pure that connection to music can be. I really want to have a musical experience of playing with like my brother, my niece and nephew, my dad, and my uncles.
Everyone
You know, so
together.
everyone together. I just really want. I mean, so I can include more of the family band for sure, but just like those, uh, yeah, everyone plays music very um passionately, and it would just be I don't know what that would feel like. It would be really nice.
Yeah, it's a very unique experience.
Yeah.
To even have that many people in music in one family, let alone spanning generations.
Yeah, the multi-generational part is definitely cool.
It's a legacy that will obviously continue as we see now with the nieces and nephews.
For sure. Oh my God.
Uh,
Yeah, they're amazing with they're like child musical instruments are so sick, and I really love like miniature instruments in general. But my brother is also um like an analog synth obsessive, and makes amazing music himself, and is like a drum sequencer head. And so now my nephew, who's one, um, is like really awesome with all of his like teenage engineering brand devices. And he just makes like sick loop. Like my little nephew's just like developing while using these tools, and I just think it's like so cool.
right. Is that your oldest brother? That
Yeah.
okay. And real quick, just to clarify, your father and your uncles, are they also a group of three boys?
They are.
All right.
It's actually been like three generations of three boys, I think. And really glad my niece broke the curse. Yeah, brought some feminine energy to this family.
So going back to Tufts, so you went there knowing that you wanted to be studying music. When did you kind of get in touch with the rest of the members of Crumb? How did that kind of happen?
Each member was a different story. It was kind of piece by piece, but Jonathan, our drummer, really funnily approached me with a bass on my back and just asked me if I would play a show with him, kind
Oh
of like
wow.
out of the blue, that he had booked without a band. Um, and then with Bree and Leela, we met in these like just like big band or small jazz ensemble playing environments, and we would have a little project together. And so we kind of just like had these concentric circles, and it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't long before we kind of just like merged around um, some songs that Leela had written, um, going back to like high school even, and just really enjoyed the experience of like playing this way together. Um, it was like very unexpected, but yeah, we just met like in that kind of dominoes way.
And this is around 2016-ish is when this is kind of the origin of this.
Yeah, we met before that, but that's when we like started recording those songs. But it was a few years by that point of doing various like playing and recording projects together. Yeah.
And what was the initial, if you could recall this point when you guys all merged together to jam together essentially in that first half, what was that experience like?
It was really it yeah, it was really special from the get-go. I think like it was as simple as um yeah, Bree and Leela coming over to where Jonathan and I were living at the time in the Boston area, and just playing around with some of these Leela song ideas. And um, I think it was refreshing because like we were all playing in different musical styles and some of us different instruments. Like Bree was studying like saxophone more as a primary instrument, and so I think it was freeing for them to play like keys. And I think that like Leela was really new to like experimenting with like songwriting, finding her voice in that way, and like we really loved what we were like hearing. And so I think we could all just like um feel that it was a very safe like landing point for all of us. I feel like they just prompted me to play bass differently from the get-go, so it was like yeah, very just naive and like natural, and it was really nice.
Do you think that you would have eventually stumbled across the way that they wanted you to play if it wasn't for them?
um that's a good question. No, I
I
mean I
appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah. um no, I think I mean I love like melodic bass playing, whatever that is. But and I think a lot of what I do now is just kind of having like little buddy parts or kind of counter melody things to like Leela's vocal ideas. Um but no, I feel like it's easy to have like regrets or be like, what would have happened if I did this or that? But I'm always like all the like wonkiness that got me to that point, it's all good because I it's really great that we met and started making music together. Like it sounds corny, but it's
I agree
very
with that. Yeah, I agree with your sentiment there. I think that that's yeah, that's apt.
yeah, it's a serendipity. It's just a very unlikely thing to happen. So
Right. Uh, did you feel like there was some through line with where everybody was coming from musically, their background within music? Was there some overlap that like everybody had a the same interest in?
yeah, there it was definitely like a lot of overlap and a lot of showing each other music and also firmly kind of being into music that the others were not. And I think that is a strength of ours, hopefully. But yeah, we would definitely in those like earlier years, especially of being split between two cars or having experiences of living together and playing albums, we were like really showing each other music and seeing where the overlap was or wasn't. But it was like, yeah, I still get just a lot of music I like from those like early car rides where Leela would just show me some playlist stuff that resonated with.
And did you show them what your brother was showing you back in the day as well?
Yeah, I think that yeah, I think hopefully we've all um shown each other new musical stylings, and then also it's really honestly interesting to see where like we don't line up. I think like Jonathan is very into like heavier musical styles and more like metal or thrash leaning things. And I'm like way more into certain like acoustic or instrumental musical styles, and um I think it's like it's kind of fun to think about why things like don't line up for you, or like when just like I know Jonathan and Bree would show each other kind of like a game almost like, okay, here's like the wildest thing I listen to, and then you show me the wildest thing you listen to. And I just like that it's like, yeah, we're not attacking one another for, what we like. We're just like
This is what I'm into. Check it out.
as simple as that.
Did the earliest iteration of the band consist of everybody who's still in the band now?
Actually, it was like a funny, like, yeah, the answer is yes. But it was just there were funny moments of like there was like a summer where um Bree, Leela, and I were meeting up and uh playing a combination of like almost like jazz standards and like early versions of what would be the like first Crumb EP songs, where I was like terribly playing a three-piece drum kit. And then like Bree was playing sax and Leela was playing guitar and maybe not singing at that point. I think even there were like vocal melodies that would be on our first EP that like Bree was playing on sax. And we had like a few party, like private, like just our family and friends, like party events. It was otherwise, the answer is totally yes. And I like, um, obviously it's like when bands have members that come in and out, or there's like a core group or even single person, like I totally understand and um don't think any less of those projects and are super appealed by them. But I've always also just been super interested in like the chemistry between a set group of people and how that like works over time. And so yeah, I think it's really nice that it's been the same four of us, and I think that's like it is what makes our sound if we have one. So
Has that chemistry changed since those early days and those early shows and this earliest incarnation?
yeah, yes and no. Like I think that it's just opened up, and so yeah, we've just like established certain patterns in how we do things, and then we've also like challenged those, and certain instruments, like new instruments, have been incorporated into this set that people didn't play before or expect to. Um, so yeah, it's definitely ever growing, but the same for people informing it.
Was there a discussion about what kind of music Crumb was going to make at all, or did it just sort of happen to be what it was?
Ooh, I think it's easier to say even in describing like a musical genre of one's own band or of us, like what you're not than what you are, kind of.
Right.
So I think it's like there's maybe moments where like someone will bring an idea and the rest of us will react like however graciously with like a, oh, like I don't know that that feels like us exactly. And or you might present one that's like, yeah, this isn't like our sound.
And then you got
um
to fight for it, right?
and then you gotta yeah, then you gotta have a drag out about it and insult each other personally. No,
And then
quite the
that's how the greatest songs get made. I mean, there is textbook ideas on how to do this. Yeah.
through animosity, yeah,
Right.
and confrontation. No, it's quite the contrary. I think yeah, I think like Leela being the primary songwriter um has like really found a way for all of us to find our roles in the songwriting or recording process. Um and like kind of feel confident about that and know that like uh we're going to contribute like in some way, whether it's like a bridge idea or an arrangement thing, or maybe like the way the demo was just like hit super hard and we want to maintain certain like scrappily recorded elements that Leela did on her own, increasingly so, I'd say, for this um, like next music. And yeah, I think it's just like I'm no one is like stepping on toes. It's very like kind of democratic and always feels like an open place to bring musical ideas.
I would go out on a limb and say that that's a good way to do it. I
I
know that's
think it's a
kind
nice
of
way to do
people will get mad at that, but I feel like that's the best way to do it.
it is. It's hard. I mean, it is really hard to do that. And I think it's taken a lot of years of like working to that point. But I think yeah, I value the way that we do things in terms of that process. And um yeah, I think that like the differences leads to a nice end product. Like,
Right. Uh, did you feel in the earlier days before that point, that everyone just instantly clicked? That there was like, okay, there's something here between all of us?
yeah, it was a little. I think it's like it's really hard to see yourself externally. So like I think it was like this felt really good for us. And when we just like naively recorded our first EP with someone locally, who would be someone that we work with very intimately on all our recordings really through now, like we treated it like any other like isolated recording project. It wasn't like now this is the serious one that's got to like go out and connect with people in the world. It was just really like a project for the sake of itself. And the fact that it clicked with other people was the surprise. But obviously a welcome one.
Uh, did you feel in these early times that it was going to go somewhere? Uh, that or was there a sign that you're like, "Ah, okay, there is some validity to this, or like there is something that is pushing this?"
It's only taught me about the whole arrival fallacy thing of being like there's gonna be a moment where it feels like you've really reached some point or of finality or accomplishment or something.
Right.
And I think it's just a perpetual act of like being grateful that we've found our audience and that it's like connecting with anyone anywhere. Like honestly, I it doesn't matter to me if someone thinks like the best thing we made was the first thing we made. Like I think it's just amazing that a single song connects with anyone in the world. And I definitely feel that way about certain other artists where it's just like a really unimaginable combination of variables that makes you receive a certain song at a certain time a certain way. And like it doesn't have to be that like you approve of every direction turn the band makes. It's like that's fine. It's literally just like glad to be connecting with anyone through this music. It's all
In
good.
any capacity, in any way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see where you're coming from on that. I do, Jesse. I think that's yeah, valid.
It's easier said than done in terms of actually like maintaining that mindset. Um because it's a big bad world of people doing, trying to be seen and doing a lot of just yeah, a lot of effort into like uh their like ever presence or of just like making sure that they're um like seen and there's a lot of content. And I think that it's like we're kind of living in a nice like it's a relief that like there's enough musical stylings and avenues that like channels and streams that people can go through, that like you'll find your audience and connect with them, and you don't need to like break through some ceiling of popularity to be visible. Like I think that's what I was looking for. Like just being like, this is an era where like everyone's kind of invisible, and in terms of like, you don't have to be a household name to be doing the music thing successfully in the world. And I think that's kind of good, because it's just like, let's squash the ego thing from the get-go and just like um go find your audience. Yeah.
When did the beginning of writing songs kind of enter for the band? Was it pretty early on that you guys started penning these ideas and working out different ideas?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it all came from Leela's initial songwriting ideas, and that's still the basis of how we do things, whether it's like a demoed out idea or being shown in person, and then everyone just contributes along the way. So it's been there from the beginning, and the process has definitely just changed with each album. Like some have been like really demoed out in terms of like each member stacks their parts, and we kind of send it around remotely, or we're grabbing it with like iPhone recordings that just capture like a room sound, and we keep adding to that. Like it's just yeah, it's super variable.
During these early shows with the full formation of the band playing, were you guys playing these songs that would initially come out or eventually come out on the self-titled EP?
Like some version of some of them. So yeah, there's like a funny crossover period there.
And how did you feel playing these early shows and kind of showing at least a variation of the songs that would eventually wind up on that self-titled EP?
It felt good, but also really nerve-wracking. Like I think those are actually some of the toughest playing experiences. If I look back, they were just, it was like they were really exciting because it was like kind of like throw and go um DIY show stuff. But it was also like hard to figure out the translation of the recording and live thing and how those informed each other. So uh things only got like just started feeling better over time. Yeah.
Now were these early shows just centered around college and Tufts itself and just parties and this kind of thing?
No, there were just different incarnations of those. Like there, it was just it wasn't like that. We didn't play together in school in this project. It was just in living in New York. Literally like a event for Leela's mom is an amazing visual artist, and she had a gallery. And so technically, our first show, although Jonathan was not there, was playing that event, or literally like a cookout that Bree's brother had. So I don't know if you could consider these Crumb shows, but they were some sort of performance with the three of us. And then when we um yeah, in Boston, we all combined uh our musical efforts, and became the more recognizable form of Crumb that played like just like a funny, like small but iconic New York venue shows for just like Come On Everybody, and like Mercury Lounge, and just like yeah, some of these spots.
Uh, what was working on the self-titled Crumb EP like for you?
Ooh, it was it's it was really good fun. It was also probably such a different way of doing things than now. So it was like kind of more manicured in certain ways, or just we like really kind of fine tooth comb poured over these, what to me is very clearly just like four instruments mostly going at a time. And so it was almost more the way you'd capture like a recording of like a jazz combo or something. And then like now we make way more layered kind of like soundscape decisions, and it becomes a way, the scope of it is just very different. So it was just about learning how to play and record together.
How did you feel when that EP finally came out? What was your reaction to it?
Well, I mean, just uploading something to, Bandcamp or some digital streaming platform, it's like into a void. It wasn't like a true
Is the
release.
biggest thing in the world, as we all know, right?
It can be, it is, and it isn't. It's like it's everything. So we did it, and it found people in some quick, unexpected way, and that was exciting. But again, very hard to just like make it and evaluate it at the time. And it also has aged really weirdly for us. Like it's funny, like our relationship with the earlier recorded music is really funny, and it's easy to like listen to and be like, wow, I would do things differently, or oh, we really sounded like that. But I think that's just some like reality distortion thing that happens. And
Right. And is that sentiment shared throughout the band? That's like, oh, I would have done that differently.
yeah, no, I mean, in just a like innocent way, like not um, being ashamed of those recordings in any way, but you see, it's just people seeing us work things out or develop a style or whatever. And I'm perfectionistic, so it's good for me to have those experiences and just and be like, it's okay, we evolved, and we put recordings down as markers of where we were at those times, and that's like valid. So
Were you still attending Tufts when the first EP came out?
no, we weren't. It was like a few of us were still doing school, um, and a few of us were living in New York. We're split up in years of school a little bit, so we don't really try to come across as a school band in that way, because it wasn't like we were playing shows as a recognizable form of us at school at all. It was like a really post all of that. Um, but yeah, our early years were definitely the East Coast, Boston to New York jaunts, and doing shows in between those places.
The Boston to New York jaunt. I like that.
Yeah.
Did you move back to New York after school or during this time period? Or did you stay in Boston, in the Boston area?
I was in the Boston area for like a year or so after, but with like a summer where I lived in New York first. And that's when we were playing some funny embryonic version of Crumb.
Right. The barbecue shows, the infamous ones.
Exactly. Yeah, I've told this timeline in a confusing way, but that's what it was like. It was just, yeah.
Right. I'm with you. I'm right there with you.
Nice.
Jesse, you're doing a bang up job, and I appreciate you doing that.
Oh,
Um,
likewise. It's good to talk. It's therapeutic.
hey, this is come
Yeah.
on. Hey, BetterHelp doesn't sponsor this podcast for no reason. All right.
Send me the invoice, yeah, for your services.
Absolutely. Will do. Yeah. You got Zelle. You're on Zelle.
That was good.
Okay, cool. Did working on the second EP Locket, was that kind of in that same time frame as the first EP, or was there a little bit of a gap in between working on the first one and working on Locket?
There was a little bit of a gap, and it was a really similar process, but it just we had like the fuel kind of from the first EP.
You were still, that was still propelling you into the second one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those first two EPs exist in like a similar world sound wise. Yeah.
Would you consider it kind of an extension, Locket, from the self-titled?
Maybe because I think that like it's hard to remember, yeah, like certain songs had existed across both EPs, like maybe that didn't make it into the first one. So there's definitely, yeah, it's like all connected. And then personally, I just kind of see a break from when we started making full length albums, or just like
Mhm.
how we approach that and how it felt. And yeah, it just feels like a clear kind of break in my mind. But that's also like, it's really hard to tell when you make an album if anything is gonna feel cohesive across the songs or from album to album. And I think I'm usually surprised that people, more so than not, identify what we make as like, yep, that's Crumb. In a way that to me is like surprise, yeah, it's just like surprising, or to me, it's like things might look more all over the map.
Right, right. But the people are seeing it clearly,
The people are seeing it clearly, and that's all that counts.
and
Yeah.
you're hearing about it.
Yeah, and I'm sometimes hearing about it.
On occasion, some of it gets to you, some of it doesn't, and yeah.
I don't read things.
Um, did you feel that after Locket, it was the first EP, right? Jinx was that the?
Yeah, Jinx was our first full length. Yep.
Did you know going into Jinx that it was going to be the first full length?
Yeah, we approached that as a really like 30-day stint of recording.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and like um really demoed out those tracks and had a pretty clear picture of how a lot of it was gonna go. So I think we must have known full length. Yeah.
Did that have an effect on what you were bringing to the table or how your mind was working, uh, rather than how you were doing things for the EPs?
I think so. I think there was like also there's a time pressure that just is always there. Or maybe was there more in our earlier years than now, where we have more flexibility of recording. That it's not good or bad, it just is makes things different. So like um we did things in shorter windows of time with fewer songs, and then that kind of like 30 days, our first time kind of like setting our expectations and figuring out like how long does it take to record a song or full length album. um it was, yeah, you're just like you're just trying to like evenly heave as much time into each thing as possible. So
And that was 10 songs on Jinx.
yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's quick. That's quick moving throughout
Yeah,
to get that in a month.
I think, yeah, there's like we've done recordings that are more spanned out, um and do it as like little bits with breaks to reflect and work on the music. And then that way was more of uh like round robin kind of, where you like really go through basic parts and foundational parts of the music and then keep circling back to fill them out more. So it's just different processes, but no right or wrong. Yeah.
I like that you threw in the round robin. I think that was that was the right place to put it. If you had one single use of it, that's where it should have been.
Good.
Yeah.
There's funny terminology in music and songwriting stuff, and round robin really sticks with me.
It caught my attention. Did you start to feel that there was more attention on the band after Jinx came out? Did you feel like that started to change things?
I don't know if it really hard to say in terms of like more attention when, but I think we're lucky that it's felt like not at any moment was there some kind of meteoric rise for us to respond to. It's just been a nice, slow, steady growth of making music for our fans and having opportunities to play it for them. So it just felt like a pretty organic climb. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the audience's reaction to Jinx?
I'm sure, like I said, like I'm sure some people just preferred the sound of songs we had previously released or the songwriting in that, or vice versa. Maybe it didn't click with anyone until they heard Jinx. So but yeah, I think in terms of like first release following EPs that had luckily garnered some listenership, like it was like, yeah, nice. This found ears. Like can't expect that. So
But you're happy to see it.
yeah, happy to see it, of course.
Uh, is the audience's reaction to songs when you play them live more indicative of people's reactions as a whole instead of what you may see online or what people comment?
Ooh,
I know I should have preferenced that, but it's going to be a hard one. But I do
no,
apologize for that.
all good. There's definitely a different feeling about certain songs as they exist in the live space and the recorded space. And people definitely are like, oh, I prefer this live than the recording. And I think that's really interesting because I think it's the recording might be some of your first or earliest experiences with that song or the piece of music. It's like, and it's you by definition like don't know it best then. Not in a simple way of like, do I know how to play my part, but just like intimately, like you haven't like pushed and pulled and like made it into something else. And then once we would like,
Which takes time. Yeah,
it just
yeah.
takes time, and doing it in a live setting, it like inevitably has some other life pumped into it that I think has been a big part of our band. And so when people are like, oh, the live is better than the recording, I think that's actually a compliment because it's like um it's just like it's evolved into its own beast kind of,
Which is good.
which is good despite the
Okay.
competition of beast.
Do you ever pay attention to the crowd when you're playing live? Is that something that grabs your attention or
Yeah, definitely. Again, that thing we were talking about of just like how it feels to have like a room kind of like riding with you or be in a good place energetically. Like certain parts of certain songs are like really exciting for people live. And I like really look forward to those moments, or when I know, yeah, there are certain moments when you know like, oh, people are gonna move this way to this song. Or really interesting when you go to different parts of the world where it's like in South America, fans amazingly are singing like the instrumental parts of your music. Like
yeah,
it's so beautiful. Like stuff like that. It's just like really fun performing experiences, and it varies like song to song, place to place. Yeah.
what has it been like though, kind of seeing the the audience get larger and playing larger places and seeing the streams of the songs online go up and up and up? What has that been like for you since the initial inception of throwing the first EP up on Bandcamp and just being like, all right, it's just it's there.
It's a really nice way to connect with the world. And it sounds corny, but like I think I can have kind of like self-isolating tendencies, and so I'm very grateful that it's like pulls me out into different parts of the world and allows me to connect with a large amount of people really quickly, in like a nonverbal way. um and
Besides when they're singing the instrumentation,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
when the verbal comes in, right?
Which is the, yeah, it is it verbal. No, but I like, it's really nice, and I just know that like other people's music can be very therapeutic for me in my own life, and if we can be that for someone else's, um that it's really fulfilling. Yeah. And it's obviously really challenging to keep the personal life and the life on the road, so to speak, both feeling like in good places, um but it's like a really good challenge. Yeah.
Why do you think so many people are gravitated and connect to the music of Crumb?
I just don't know. I know that I really connect with the like songwriting perspective of like lyrical perspective of bands. And so if I can compliment Leela from the inside slash outside, like I think that she has an ability to write music that's very personal and specific, but also appeals to just like the human experience and is re- relatable, hopefully. Um, and I think just that, that's what I connect with about our music.
In that that could also be shown or felt through other people.
Yeah.
There's a new album coming out, which I think people are going to be pretty stoked on. Uh, does this album include the most recent release with Melody's Echo Chamber? Is that song going to be a part of this album?
It's not going to be a part of this album. That was a really special kind of one-off collaboration. I've been a huge fan of Melody for a really big part of my life, and that was such a saving grace, like deep pandemic moment that we could do that remotely. And I think it was also fun to have something to kind of feed people with while we were working on new material in the scope of the album. So
Yeah, I think that I believe it's just a self-titled her first album, Melody's
yeah,
Echo Chamber. I think it's a self-titled one. I think that that has had like yourself, it's influenced a lot of people's mindset on music and for musicians to make it. And I do feel like Crumb will have that imprint on others as well. Speaking from an outside perspective.
that's really
So
kind. Yeah, her that music and album is like deeply inspiring, awesome, just like palette and really specific. Like and that it just felt like a place that I could safely go to. Just it was so specific and the songwriting is so beautiful and but that's nice. I hope other people feel like our music is a place to go to. That's cool.
absolutely. I think that that is a place that people do go to. Let me just say what you just said a little bit differently than how you said it.
It sounded good. It sounded better when you said it.
I don't think so. We'll let the people decide this, comment below.
It's probably your mic too.
It might be that I think that the mic gives a lot of gravitas to the conversations. Is the way that you're writing these albums in songs constantly changing throughout all of these releases?
Yeah, just in the ways that I kind of mentioned about like the order of things, but always being with like Leela being the primary songwriter and having um the initial ideas often stemming from demos of hers and then writing new parts together, just going in on the like arranging of it and turning it into something with the four of us. Um but yeah, it's just gotten to a more like open and collaborative place, I think.
I like that place. Is
Sounds
there
that sounds fluffy, but I just mean like if you graft from the beginning, like it's hard to like land on any musical idea when you don't know like what you're gonna be. And so like we just Leela's like initial songwriting ideas from when she was like in high school were like maybe she needed some convincing that like this is a really cool musical idea. And so it's like we all just needed to find some confidence. And now it's like, yeah, if an idea doesn't make its way into a song, it's not invalid. And like, yeah, we all would feel like heard in the songwriting process and stuff. But there's
yeah,
been some similarities and some breaks from the patterns and stuff. Yeah.
is there a release date for this new album?
There is a release date.
What is the name of the album?
Yeah, it's called Amama.
Amama. Okay. Very nice. And is this through what record label is this through?
So we are independent. So it will be called Crumb Records, but through Secretly Distribution.
Oh, okay, very nice. All right. What can the people expect from this album, just to give them a little taste before the whole thing comes out?
I think it's got a bit more teeth, maybe, whatever that means.
Sounds
And
good.
yeah, I'm excited to see what like how it hits people, honestly. It's really hard to gauge. But I'm excited. Yeah.
So Alabama is coming soon. I'm very stoked to hear it, and I really do appreciate you coming on.
It was very easy. It was nice talking to you. Thanks for asking.
Likewise, and thank you for coming on. But before I let you go, I got some promo to do here. So
Yes.
all of the other Crumb albums are everywhere. Wherever you get your music, that's where you could find it. And you can find the merch at shop.crumbtheband.com to go support the band. And you could buy the digital music from the band camp as we speak. And that lovely song that you guys did with Melodies Echo Chambers up there, which is fantastic.
We always have trusty old crumbtheband.com for all the other stuff.
Perfect. Thank you again for coming on, Jesse. And I will speak to you in a minute. I'm going to start recording. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Okay, sounds good.